Gary, the project 5.
Thank you very much. Today my topic is going to be, you've come a long way, but we've got a lot longer to go. And when I first thought of that particular topic, I was afraid that those of you who are in this room remember the cigarette commercials of "You've come a long way, baby." I can just hear some of the young folks, "Cigarette commercial? Oh, I never." Because that was a long time ago. The cigarette commercial had the lady being very sexy, very seductive when she walked. "Don't I look sophisticated? I can now kill myself just like a man can." That's not the "you've come a long way" that I'm talking about tonight. Tonight, you're going to learn, I guarantee you, something that you've never heard before. And that is the differences and the way that we have come as far as the differences between blacks and whites. Yes, we've come a long way, and yes, we do have a long way to go. When I was doing research for my book, From Fear to Freedom, I have a section in here of chapter 4. It's called "They Flew with Crimson Tails." 2 years ago, Lucas came out with the movie Red Tails. How many saw Red Tails? Okay. How many of you remember that opening scene right from the beginning? Screen's pitch black, first sentence comes on, second sentence comes on, and then the reference. This is what it said. "Blacks are mentally inferior by nature, subservient, and cowards in the face of danger. They are therefore unfit for combat." 1925 U.S. Army War College study. When I and my wife were sitting in the theater, there was about half a dozen of young black men. Right from the very beginning, they were walking out. I so wanted to get up, follow them out, and say, "You get your butt back in there. You're going to see what your grandfathers and your grandmothers went through." See, I knew how the story ended. I'd already done the research. It was amazing of how the blacks were treated back in those days. If you get a chance to see the movie, and I really hope that you do, rent it, buy it, but in the beginning, you have a choice of the movie or the extras. Go to the extras first. Click on Double Victory. The double V standing for victory at home and abroad. The blacks had to prove themselves, and they knew it. And they stepped forward. The Tuskegee Experiment. Why was it called the experiment? Because of what you just heard at the beginning of that sentence of they were inferior. So there was a lot that they had to face. They were right up against the wall in the beginning. They stepped forward, and boy, did they prove themselves. In From Fear to Freedom, in the chapter 3, "They Flew with Crimson Tails," Nikki has her first experience as a 13-year-old to go on an airplane ride. You're a pilot. You remember that first flight that you ever took?
Absolutely.
Got you hooked, didn't it? Anybody here remember that very first flight? How when it accelerated, it was pushing you back against the seat, and when they came in for a landing, it just kind of threw you forward? Nikki was hooked at that time. She was being taken by her grandfather to see the Smithsonian, the Smithsonian, where they have plaques and different planes and stuff like that. And when they came to the plaque memorializing the first all-black American military aviators, Grandpa stopped and says, "Have I ever told you about the Tuskegee Airmen?" Of course he had. "Something about us old-timers. We got a good story, and we're going to tell it over and over and over." And Nikki had heard the story many times. But a good story is always worth hearing again, and she was looking forward to it. Why did they call it the experiment? Because there were those that really believed the blacks were inferior. Grandpa said, "When I look back at the way the blacks were treated, I'm thoroughly disgusted. Segregation should never have happened in this great country, but it did." I knew what segregation meant, Nikki thought to herself, but at my age of 13, I had never experienced it myself. The thought of a person not being able to go someplace just because of the color of his or her skin was to me incomprehensible. Grandpa took a deep breath and let it out slowly. They were treated like second-class citizens. The blacks were called Negroes or coloreds, and some of them were called a word that thankfully is known as the N-word, so it no longer is used. I had an opportunity to meet the Tuskegee Airmen, and one of them told me about a story of when they were on the Freeman Field, which is known as the Freeman Field Mutiny. Roger Terry, an officer, looks over and sees the White Officers Club. Very nice. He turns around and he looks at his officers club, and it's a ping pong table. Not that nice. He gathers them together and says, "We're going to go over there in groups of 3. Why groups of 3? Because they could not go in groups of 4. They had to sign a paper saying they would never be in more than groups of 3. Unbelievable. Les Williams still has that paper. Went over, and it came time for Roger Terry. They were always being turned away. Roger Terry comes up and wants to get in, and he goes walking around the officer telling him no. He brushed up against the officer. Touching an officer's uniform, believe it or not, was a felony. He was arrested, and the next day they start rounding up all the officers. Les told me that he was married, so he had a home that he and his wife lived in. The MPs went to every other house. They had a 50-50 chance of being arrested. Les was okay. We have come a long way. There's more to that story, and if you want to learn more, you'll have to get the book From Fear to Freedom. Thank you.